came another convincing, although this time maybe a bit disjointed, 35-14 victory over Virginia. I'm Tim O'Malley of Irish Illustrated, joined by John Brice of Football Scoop, and this is Irish Illustrated Overtime. JB, we have hit the part of a 8-game winning streak here where we're critiquing how convincing Notre Dame's wins are. They were a bit off today offensively, but that defense never rests.
No, the defense never rests, and I'm not sure what's more misleading in the box score. And there's a lot of coaches that would say box scores are for losers, and as long as you win, I completely agree with that sentiment. But for Notre Dame to have had 450 yards of total offense, aside from Jadarian Price flashing and Jeremiah Love being great the whole day, it wasn't a lot to be satisfied about that offensive performance. Conversely, Notre Dame defense absolutely dominant, arguably its most dominant performance of the season, and yet they allowed 300 yards again, almost 80 of that on a garbage time drive late in the game, as Notre Dame once again continued to get great, valuable reps for its younger players and even some walk-ons.
Just starting with the offense, I mean, they're staked with the ball at the 25-yard line because of a Chris Tyree muff on the opening kickoff. Notre Dame goes in and scores. They were actually aided, though, by a third down roughing the passer penalty. That was either going to be a fourth down attempt from the 4-yard line or a field goal. After that, they did not get a first down in the first quarter. So I was talking to Tom, the intern, earlier here, and Notre Dame had 5 3-and-outs in the first half, and that what could have been a 3-and-out and a field goal, it just did not seem like they could get things going today. And of course, at some point, Jeremiah Love and that speed takes over. What's your favorite line from Jeremiah Love? He likes to bury the lead.
Yeah. I got breakaway speed.
Yes, he does have breakaway speed. Love the MVP today, 16 carries, 137 yards. Aeneas Williams, in support of Love, had 10 touches for 53 yards, including 2 fourth-down conversions. Unfortunately, neither one of Williams' fourth-down conversions led to points because Notre Dame missed 2 field goals. Mitch Jeter did not play again, but you had a good point about Mitch Jeter. We don't want to harp on this, but I think it's very important. I had not thought about it.
Well, he did play. He kicked some early PATs. They just did not use him for field goals, T.O. And to your point quickly about that opening third down conversion only occurring because of penalty, really Notre Dame was 1 for 13 on third downs. When you factor that in, that's obviously not going to be winning football against too many teams. But I did like the way that Notre Dame asserted itself on the ground. I think that we're starting to see Aeneas Williams' role grow more and more. And I think that his running style and his really physical frame, I think, is becoming a good counterpunch to the speed and dynamics of especially Love and also Price. And as for Mitch Jeter, some PATs early, but it got really cold in that stadium, especially as the game wore on. When you got a guy dealing with a hamstring, you don't want to give him any reason to possibly tweak it with a 45-yard field goal attempt in a game that at the time you were probably up 35-0 or 35-7. So continue, let him get reps on the early stuff just so he stays in habit of almost like sinking 6-foot putts with PATs, and then get out to the long stuff as he feels better.
Let's get to that second quarter. And I want to shout out to Rod Hurd because at halftime, Rod Hurd was the defensive MVP of this game. He helped break up a trick play. He forced a fumble that if there was a turning point in the game, it was his forced fumble with Virginia driving inside the Notre Dame 30-yard line. The Irish went down and scored on a pass to Jaden Harrison, I think 78 yards, called back for hands to the face. That's okay. Notre Dame responded with the fake punt of the year. Absolutely beautiful design. We found out they've been working on it since after the Sun Bowl or during Sun Bowl preparations. Jordan Faison goes 73 yards for the score, also called back for illegal formation. Now, they didn't really lose 151 yards because just one of those touchdowns could count. It was on the same possession. But the response thereafter by Notre Dame, I think, speaks volumes to where they've come as a program.
And no doubt, T.O. And we've harped on it. People are probably tired of hearing us talk about it, but I am struck by the maturity of this team, the purposeful approach of this team, and we saw that today. And the team that played against Northern Illinois, even with an early 7-0 lead like the Irish had today against Virginia, wouldn't have handled that as well, wouldn't have handled the doldrums that followed that early lead as well. And so I am very impressed by that, and I'm glad you brought up the fake punt. I have received some more clarity on it, and I want to share this. So the officials ruled that you can't have somebody under center take a snap right there unless they're in the numbers 50 to 79, between number 50 and 79. per the NBC broadcast. That's what I'm told here by someone with direct knowledge that and Marcus Freeman, when I asked him about it, said, they interpreted it this way. He very obviously didn't agree with the interpretation. But in that situation, you aren't allowed to have a player take a direct snap under center. That is why Notre Dame contended on the sidelines. We saw both Marty Biaggi and Marcus Freeman say, no, he was in shotgun. It was a shortened shotgun, obviously. He was about maybe a yard and a half behind the center, but he did not take the direct snap from center. It was pitched back to him in a shotgun form and handed it off. So anyway, just that's frustrating because that was such beautiful design and execution, and now it's gone. I mean, anybody would know what was coming if Notre Dame lined up in that similar formation again, unless the Irish opted to keep it and run right instead of left and fake the pitch to phase on. But special teams, we talked about it pregame. We said that Notre Dame needed to have special teams be an asset. It was from the outset, and special teams play has been really strong for Notre Dame the past 6 weeks or so overall. And now Notre Dame is tied going into this weekend's action. Notre Dame is tied for first nationally with the most block kicks in the country.
We talked about the response. I didn't explain what the response was. Adon Schuler gets the first of 3 interceptions in the second quarter. It leads to a 2-yard Cooper Flanagan touchdown. That was a 2-yard drive. That's why Notre Dame's touchdown drives were 25 yards, 2 yards, 30 yards, and then the 2 88-yarders. And that's what we mean by disjointed, but also interceptions. Leonard Moore and Xavier Watts, the man always around the ball. My favorite line post game was they asked Adon Schuler what he wants to take from watching Xavier Watts. He said, getting the ball. Yeah. That's what Xavier Watts does. He goes and gets the ball.
No, he does. He's so good. We've talked about it before, just the fact that he's such a natural football player, and he is. You still get the impression from Xavier Watts that he could, if they needed him, he could help this team offensively. But the fact is he's just grown into what I think is arguably the best safety in college football right now. I know there's a couple other guys out there, Starks at Georgia, a couple other players who would be in that conversation. I don't see anybody playing better football at the safety position anywhere in college football right now than X Watts.
Yeah, defensively, there were 6 3 or 4 and outs in the first half. There was another drive that got another punt drive, just 6 plays, 22 yards, 5 plays, 25 yards, 4 plays and 30 yards. That was the Rod Hurd fumble. Start the second half with a 3 and out. It's Al Golden's. He's a cheat code at this point defensively. And I agree with you that Xavier Watts is the best college safety in the country. I don't know. I don't think he'll be the first safety taken off the board. I know he's going to play in the NFL because he's just a very, very good football player. One of the other best safeties in the country, Jonas Sanker, made a big play today too with a forced punt, with a forced fumble, and a little bit out of character. Notre Dame turning the ball over twice. That hasn't happened in a while. But as Marcus Freeman said, they always win the turnover battle. And to your point, I'm not sure if you brought it up on our pregame instant analysis or our pregame podcast. The key with James Rendell is they need to continue to win the field position battle. That's why he needs to, I don't want to say continue punting the way he was punting because a lot of it was rolls. Today he got his rolls, but he hit some boomers when he really needed to. He was crucial today. You never want your punter to be the first quarter offensive MVP, but he definitely was.
Yeah, he had a 64-yarder that was credited with maybe an official 1 yard in return. So that shows you that he boomed it, but he boomed it with enough hang time and so deep that he didn't outkick his coverage, which I think is sometimes what Notre Dame is worried about because he could kick it 65 yards, but sometimes it's a low missile. And that was not the case today. And again, great coverage from Notre Dame's special teams units. You want to continue to get Mitch Jeter healthy. You'd want Mitch Jeter, I think, to have to kick a somewhat meaningful field goal before the playoffs. And yes, I said before the playoffs, there's no indication that Notre Dame won't continue handling business and be a playoff team. And if Mitch needs to kick a 30-yarder next week and then maybe try a 42-yarder at USC, whatever it be, I do think you need him back in a game environment on a field goal before the high stakes of a playoffs game.
Notre Dame, a quick count, I show 17 to 18 run and or pass stuffs. I think quarterback pressures was what I would have forecasted being the difference. They did have plenty of pressure, but just controlling the line of scrimmage, they were better controlling the line of scrimmage, especially considering you're playing without Howard Cross and Donovan Hinish making the start. Remember, Donovan Hinish is actually the third string nose tackle making the start today. There was none of that. Oh, let's see if Virginia can play patient, persistent football and push Notre Dame around inside like Northern Illinois did at times, like Florida State oddly did at times. Notre Dame shut that down today. They made Virginia try to beat them with the pass, and that is not possible.
No, and, last week, what was it, 10 TFLs for the Irish defense, 8 of them sacks. Today, 5 TFLs, 2 sacks, again, with a diminished cast up front, but Hinish was really good. 4 tackles, a sack in that. He also was credited with the quarterback hurry. And on a day that we didn't see that much Gabe Rubio. I don't know. I talked about it with our colleague Andrew Mintock during the game. There was long stretches where we really did not see Gabe Rubio whatsoever, credited officially with 1 tackle in the game. You do a great job on the snap counts on Mondays. I can't wait to see what Gabriel Rubio's snap count was, because I watched for a really long time because of how much Hinish was playing and how much I thought Notre Dame might have to rotate in there. And there were just long stretches where Rubio didn't play.
Notre Dame's defense stopped 9 of 11 third and fourth down conversions by Virginia in the first half. Right after that, they came out and stopped 3 of the next 5. And then, of course, gets a little bit looser when you have a 35-7 lead. Getting back to the offense, though, Riley Leonard, 3 touchdown passes, interception. It was a quality interception. It was he was not always accurate today, but that was just a pass that was intercepted. That wasn't one of the bad ones. But you would think that when Riley Leonard is 22 of 32, 22 of 33 with 2 drops, 3 touchdowns, it would look a little better than it did today. I think I mentioned this to Drew Mentok also during the game. I was thinking to myself, I feel like he's not having a good enough game because he's not made a difference with his legs. The passing was actually okay. It's just he wasn't making a difference with his legs, and he really needs that to augment the passing attack.
He does, because he's such a better passer when he gets rolling with his legs. And we don't have it in front of us. I bet that his 32 yards rushing are probably his lowest total of the year, though, and didn't have anything longer than 14 yards today. And that's 32 rushes on or 32 yards on 8 official rushing attempts. So that's subdued compared to his normal numbers. That's also, again, why I think it's significant what you got from Price, Love, and then Aeneas Williams, as you noted, 10 touches. That's big time.
Yeah, and his 14-yard run was a scramble. I try to write that down during the game. Sometimes you're not paying 100% attention if it's QB power, scramble, or situation. The Riley Leonard running game was shut down. I thought if Notre Dame had a little bit more success maintaining drives, Jadarian Price probably could have had more than 6 carries for his 44 yards. But I think it's just when Aeneas Williams is in there, he's going to have the day. When Jadarian Price is in there, he's going to have the day to augment things. But getting Price involved, he had a 20-yard gain today. I still would like to see more opportunities for Jadarian Price. I have constantly not belittled him for his stuff rate. It's gotten better, but he is such a weapon when he hits that second level. I do think he needs a few more carries in some of the more high-profile games coming forward.
Whether it's carries or in the throw game, I agree with you. I would like to see I would especially like to see Love and Price get more action catching the ball out of the backfield. And look, we've seen more and more from this offense in terms of plays that they're trying and plays that they're implementing as each week goes on. I would not be surprised if there's still a couple of screens in the bag that we haven't seen Notre Dame utilize yet that can go to one of those tailbacks. But Jadarian Price's straight line speed is so good. And then Jeremiah Love has the shifts, the ability to shift, and also
he's a shapeshifter when he shifts too. He has that ability.
He does. He gets skinny. And then he can run away from people. So, again, we're nitpicking a little bit about a 35-14 win on a day that, again, we saw some other teams. Louisville lost at Stanford. So
not helpful though. Not all that helpful.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'm just saying, like on a day where teams completely did not take care of business, Notre Dame did a fine job of taking care of business.
And this is a good point, actually. Regine, I believe it is. Indy had many 3rd and 10 pluses today. That'll make it tough. I think it was their own fault they were getting 3rd and 10 plus, though, because there were some costly penalties. Actually, costly penalties cost them touchdowns as well, and a couple long runs. Pat Coogan had 2 of those. His was illegal hands to the face on that 78-yard touchdown. He also had a hold that I think erased about a 11-yard catch and run. Notre Dame was putting itself in this position, though. I know 3rd and 10 is hard to convert, but their job is to stay ahead of the chains. I thought Virginia did a good job. They didn't let Riley Leonard get them ahead of the chains. Sometimes the defense shows up too. I know there was mistakes by Notre Dame, but they put Notre Dame behind. Notre Dame put themselves behind the chains, and Virginia aided that cause too, because they were able to really keep Leonard under wraps.
Yeah, we would have to dive in completely to see. I did feel like during the game and exiting the game to that point that it seemed Notre Dame tried to maybe throw it a little bit more on first down, just to mix it up a bit more. And then they were terrible throwing the ball on first down today, and that's what put them behind the sticks on many 2nd and 3rd downs. 4 of 16 total on the money downs because they connected on 3 or 4 4th downs, and the 4th one was late in the game and it really didn't matter. But 1 for 12 on 3rd downs, obviously that to me is where you start first on video review to try and fix this, as we're now joined by Tim Prister.
Well, Tim, we're going to lead in with a quick one for you here. Actually, a question says, can Notre Dame play this type of game and win the rest of their games on their schedule? Let's just say the next 2 games on their schedule, because obviously it's different when you're playing a playoff environment.
Well, if you go 1 for 12 on 3rd down in the Coliseum, you probably, there's a good chance that you don't win, depending upon all the other things that happened. It was a wacky game. It got wacky there the last 6 minutes of the second quarter. Yeah, 1 for 12, you're going to fail, and 9 penalties. You can't afford to have 9 penalties. Now, I know there was a lot of grousing about the officials, so I quickly looked up Oregon's. People were asking actually about holding penalties, and I couldn't compute that while the game was going on. But actually, if you go, I looked at Georgia. Georgia's had 73 penalties called on them and 51 against the opposition. So, look, Notre Dame was a little bit sloppy. I don't know that any of the, I have to watch the TV version of the game to see which one of the penalties you can dispute. I think there was a late hands to the face that looked a little bit ticky-tack, but they have to play better than that. But it is a senior day game, and they won again by 21 points. Tack it on to the previous, they've won their last 7 games by an average, the last 7 home finales by an average of 35 points per game. So I wouldn't be overly concerned about some of the issues today, because they've really been playing very quality football, and you're not going to be razor sharp every time out, even in your last home game.
Well, today was complimentary football too, and I know we hear that a lot, but when you pass as Notre Dame does, Notre Dame's biggest plays, they're a big play offense that they can score quickly, but it's because of Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. So when you pass the way Notre Dame does, you have to play complimentary football, because you're not going to get many. There aren't going to be many drives where Notre Dame is crisp throwing 4 for 5 going down the field on a 10-play drive to score a touchdown against a quality defense. So you do rely a little bit on Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price breaking one, Riley Leonard converting. It's not going to happen all the time. So Tim, before you joined, we talked. James Rendell had an impactful day. I was joking with you. It's not good that he's the MVP of this first quarter as on offense.
Drive after drive after drive.
He had an impactful day, and I think the complimentary football comes from Freeman. Finally answered it today. When you have a defense like yours, what does that do for everything else? He says that allows us to have, unfortunately, a not great offensive first half and still be in position to put it away almost in the first half.
It was I thought that. The passing game was a little bit disappointing, and again, we need to see the TV version of this. But I would say, whereas last week I talked about Leonard's numbers were a reflection of the defense that the Florida State secondary was playing. I come out of this thinking that the wide receiver core or the receiving core in general wasn't creating a lot of space for themselves for Leonard to throw them the football. I may think something different after I rewatch it tomorrow, but I don't think it was a great day for Notre Dame's wideouts. It was a really good day for Jaden Harrison, and you feel good about a kid like that because he makes a decision going from Marshall to Notre Dame, probably with greater individual expectations than what he's been able to reach. But he was good today. Obviously, the 78-yarder was negated. We were remiss in not asking about Jaden Greathouse after the game, although we probably wouldn't have gotten a good answer anyway. We'll know more about that on Monday. Not sure that Jaden Greathouse is necessarily an essential piece against Army because you have a whole bunch of wide receivers and people to catch the football. Why is it that Notre Dame doesn't have a guy with 50 catches? Because Riley Leonard gets the football to everybody, another 11 another 11 receivers today, 14 wideouts, or 14 of his 22 were to wideouts, and then the rest were split between the tight ends. Mitchell Evans had the most with 4 catches. But Leonard just does a really good job of distributing the football.
And frankly, they don't throw as much either to lead into. I mean, that is a big part of it. They don't throw the ball as much as other teams do that you're looking at in the playoffs.
Yeah, it was 33 passes today, so it was a little bit higher than normal, I guess, for Leonard.
Yeah, it's a good point on the receivers not really having their best day, TP, and this is something T.O. and I talked about this week. So I think we need to bring it up. And Notre Dame is 98th in the country going into this weekend in terms of pass attempts. But as Tim and I discovered, Notre Dame entered this weekend with 19 drops on the season. That's the most, tied for the most of any team in the top 25 rankings.
Wow.
They had 2, if not 3 more drops today. I think it was 3. But anyway,
I know Collins had a drop. There was at least 2.
There was at least 2. I really thought there was 3, but either way, now Notre Dame has more than 20 drops on the season, but is hovering around 100 in terms of pass attempts. That's certainly a bugaboo that, it's not going to kill you against a Virginia or even a Navy or Georgia Tech, or probably not Army, but on the road against SC, which got a decent win today, held on to beat Nebraska 28-20. Like, you can't have drops and you can't be 1 for 12 on third downs. To Foxtrot real quick, I'm actually not peeping the Tennessee game. I'm actually looking at pictures of Brian Kelly slamming his fist on the table from earlier this year because the Florida Gators just savagely trolled Brian Kelly. And so if you're watching and you haven't seen it, go to Florida Gators official football Twitter account, because I promise it will make you laugh out loud on this Saturday night.
You're right.
Tim, we'll have more on the drops versus passes, but to put it in perspective, Notre Dame with 19 drops coming into the game, and Miami is 5th. This is the top 25 only. We don't care about the other teams at this point in the season. It's mid-November, and Notre Dame's in the playoff race, so we don't care about teams that aren't in the top 25. But Miami had 17 drops coming in. Miami is 8th in the country in pass attempts, and Notre Dame is 98th. And that means Notre Dame's players are dropping the ball too much. And Notre Dame had fewer pass attempts than everyone on this list, save for Army, and there was one more team. I'm going to blow it by saying, in South Carolina, I believe. So that's a commentary on the wide receivers when you lead the top 25 in drops and you're 98th in the country.
It is, and I didn't really suspect that. We know that Bo Collins has had a bunch of issues, and it's really, the drop today. I mean, come on, man. I mean, where's your level of concentration? That one's a little bit disappointing. I wouldn't have anticipated that. And I don't think Riley Leonard throws a difficult ball to catch. He doesn't have a cannon. I think he throws a pretty catchable ball. Now, is he the most accurate guy? Does he hit guys in stride all the time? No, he doesn't.
There's some moving for the ball. You're right.
Yeah, So I mean, that contributes to it a little bit. But I wouldn't have anticipated Notre Dame being, especially 98th in the country in the number of passes attempted. I would not have anticipated that. So that's a little bit disappointing. Who Faison's dropped a couple. Who are the other culprits?
Faison's probably dropped at least a handful, at least 6.
Yeah.
I'll look up those stats.
Mitchell's had some. Chris Mitchell, especially earlier in the year.
I know we had one against A&M out of the chute. Yeah.
Bo Collins would lead the team, though. I can see him at the top. I'm just I believe now that might be 7 from Bo Collins. We're about to transition to I don't want to make bad TV here while you guys watch me look something up to get this proper, but go ahead, Tim.
Well, I was going to say, I'm looking at what you guys have already commented on, and I've got to give a shout out to Donovan Heinisch. I thought he played really, really well. There's a good picture of BK. Heinisch played really well. He got another sack, 3 sacks in 2 games. He was stout. When you're talking about, when I looked at the numbers, the Virginia running game, the 2 running backs, their numbers, if you look at them, they combine for 4.8 yards per carry, which doesn't look bad. But the reality is that when the game was in the balance, which was right in the last 7 minutes of the first half, they weren't gashing Notre Dame. They had a 15-yard run, a 14-yard run. I thought Notre Dame did a really excellent job of containing the interior, and Heinisch was at the forefront of that. I need to watch a little bit more closely to see what Mills did. I saw Mills coming off the edge at least one of the snaps, and then Rubio was in there as well. we'll have to watch the TV version of it. But Heinisch has done a really good job. We've talked about him weighing 271, and I see that Notre Dame lists him at 274. We talked to him this week, and he says he's 285. He also says he doesn't have the sense of humor that his brother Kurt does, and I would agree with that. But not many people have the sense of humor that Kurt Heinisch does. But shout out to Donovan Heinisch. I thought he played a pretty stout game today.
Oh, he did for sure. I have Heinisch, Watts, Mills, and Hurd all over my notes for just making plays in the first half. The second, this is really interesting. I don't know if people notice this at home. 10 drives offensively for both teams in the first half. That can be a game sometimes for Notre Dame, and not only against Navy. That can be at 10 or 11 drives as a Notre Dame football game. There were 10 in the first half.
There are a lot of games, Tim, an entire game you don't have 10. Yeah. You have 8.
I think Notre Dame has a game this year. Sorry, T.O. I think Notre Dame has a game this year where it only had 9 possessions the entire game.
Yeah, and it was in the second half, it adjusted. Virginia had 4 possessions and Notre Dame had 5. That's going to be a frustrating thing or an interesting thing to look at, Tim, when you do tail the tape tomorrow, because this is the second half drive chart for Notre Dame. To put it in perspective, was the touchdown drive was Jeremiah Love, 3 plays, 88 yards. They had 7 plays for 35 yards, which I consider a productive drive until you throw the interception, Riley Leonard. They had 14 plays, 72 yards, turnover on downs, 12 plays, 24 yards. There were some penalties involved, moving the ball back there with the missed field goal. That's all they had to show for it in the second half. So they just took complete control in the second quarter, and credit to Priester. Before we go on to playoff conversation, you mentioned Virginia stinks in the second and third quarter. They were abysmal in the second quarter.
Man,
they lost the game in the second quarter today.
They did. It's like they pack it in. Hey, I want to mention before we go to playoffs, and I don't want to forget this because I ran into Jack Seiler, who longtime representative of the Orange Bowl, a Notre Dame graduate. I didn't even realize he was there until I saw him at the end of the game. It's always good to visit with him, and he would obviously like Notre Dame to come down and visit him down in Miami Gardens. But he said, what's Notre Dame's kicker situation? I said, well, Jeter's probably banged up again. He said, man, this is a wrong time of year to have your kicker banged up. And if they can get through Army and USC without a legitimate first team kicker, Jeter has a little bit time to get ready for the playoffs, 3 weeks actually before they would play again if they're fortunate enough to make the playoffs. But that's not a good situation right now. Diomede was he was the best option for a 54-yarder. He gave it a run, but that's not anybody that we had on our radar to attempt a big kick. So they need a healthy Mitch Jeter. There's no doubt. And they're just going to have to keep piecing it together, and that's a little bit concerning.
I think the other key is I'm not sure if Jay brought this up to put a finer point on it. He thinks Jeter needs a real kick before the playoffs start. So Mitch Jeter needs to go to USC and kick a 39, 42-yard field goal. I think that would be a big step forward, and that's the place to do it probably. It's going to be cold next week too. Yeah. I think in the Bronx at night.
I don't think you want Mitch Jeter. What's it been, almost a month since he's kicked a meaningful field goal? I don't think you want Mitch Jeter going 2 months in between meaningful field goal attempts. I do think they protected him tonight. Diomede had the distance. He was just wide right. Yep. And I don't think Notre Dame even tries that kick if it wasn't so comfortably ahead in the contest at that point.
Well, maybe you're looking, understanding the situation at kicker. It's like, let's give this kid a shot and see if he, finds a little bit of magic. Imagine the confidence he would had gained had he nailed that. But I think you make a good point, John, because I don't care how long you've been kicking in college football. You need some meaningful shots, and every time out, it's like your first baseball game of the year. It feels like, no matter how many years you play, your first at bats of the season are your first at bats, and there's a correlation with kickers too, actually from game to game.
Jeter was either injured on his kick last week that he missed, tweaked it, or reacted the way a kicker that doesn't normally miss kicks reacts. And that's why I think it's very important he gets back in the swing of things. Switching to what is going on right now, what has happened today. Last week, there was chaos last week around Notre Dame when we were doing this Irish Illustrated overtime. Right now, Boise State is tied at the half. Oregon's only up 6-3 on Wisconsin. Wisconsin is somewhat driving at their own 40-yard line with 2 minutes left. And, of course, Tennessee leads Georgia 10-7. JB, anything of note other than Irish fans definitely want Tennessee to eliminate Georgia from the proceedings because Georgia is a dangerous team to jump right in front of Notre Dame?
Well, the other thing to note is, again, I'll continue to hammer home the point. If you're a Notre Dame fan, you want Tennessee to win to knock Georgia out. You want the ACC and the Big 12 to continue beating up on one another. Certainly, Vegas odds makers believe that Kansas has a great opportunity to knock off BYU tonight. That game is at BYU. The last I checked, the line was BYU favored by just 2.5. And let's remember, this is a Kansas team that just a week ago put up 45, 46 points on then one-loss Iowa State. So I think that's significant. The weather is supposed to be gnarly tonight in Provo, super cold. It had been snowing there during the day. We'll see how the Jayhawks respond to that. But as your scoreboard watching today and in the coming weekends, you want, and you're a Notre Dame fan, you want everything to unfold that would make the ACC and the Big 12 one bid leagues. And the scenario I see right now is that if BYU finishes 12-0 and then happen to lose the Big 12 championship game to, say, Colorado, then I think in that scenario, the Big 12 would get 2 teams in.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Starts putting a squeeze on things. Does that bump an SEC team? What does that do to Notre Dame? And then conversely, I think the ACC is going to be stuck just being a one bid league, barring just chaos, complete chaos here over the final 2 full weeks of the regular season.
And let me remind everybody that Army had the weekend off. They finally trailed in a game last week, but it was 3-0 early and then scored 14 points. They're not throwing the football much at all. The phenomenon of Navy, who, wow, 35-0 to Tulane. I expected Tulane to win that game. I thought that was a -7.5. I saw it. I thought that was a good pick, but Army is not throwing the football at all. They are playing stout defense, so Notre Dame is going to have to. Their wideouts should be able to get some separation against them. I'm sorry, I'm drawing you away from the talk of playoffs, but just looking ahead a little bit to them, I find it really hard to believe that Army's in a position to outscore Notre Dame, like to go into a game where you match up offenses and see who can score the most points. I realize that's what every game is, but I think you know where I'm coming from here. I don't think Army can put up the kind of points against Notre Dame to outscore Notre Dame's offense.
Relevant question from Cayman Beavers real fast. Any news on Greathouse? No, we're going to assume he's going to be out this week with a shoulder injury. But the important thing is thoughts on who would replace him in the lineup. It is definitely Jaden Harrison. Yeah. That's his backup who's playing just as well as Jaden Greathouse. Although I thought Greathouse is really streaking the last few weeks I wrote about.
No, he was. But now you give Harrison an opportunity. He got an opportunity today. He made the most of it. It's a damn shame that 78-yarder didn't count. But it happened. It happened. What happened on the back end of it with the quarterback had nothing to do with, the outcome of the play. Jaden Harrison beat his man and ran away from him. And so at least he's on the rise as we wait to hear what we know about Jaden Greathouse.
And Riley Leonard should take confidence from that play, regardless of it getting called back, because when you go back and watch it, and I've watched the replay again already just on Twitter, I think it's one of his 5 best throws of the year. He hits Jaden Harrison with a perfect strike across the middle, hits him in stride so that Harrison is able to make the catch and continue to accelerate. And I thought that was really key because we've seen some receivers, when Leonard has hit them downfield, sometimes have to wait on the ball or adjust their bodies. Harrison didn't really have to adjust his body in that instance.
One final wrap up too. We were talking about this on our walk or on our drive back to do incident analysis. I guarantee you Howard Cross will be listed as questionable, not out next week, because they're going to need Army to prepare for Howard Cross. He might not have moved, but he'll be listed as questionable for that week, whether he's trying to play or not. I still think Howard Cross is in break glass in case of emergency mode for USC, because you cannot re-injure Howard Cross. And he has been battling injuries the entire season. If you're out 1 week, totally booted, he'd be playing through some serious pain to be playing against Army.
Pretty tough. I want to give before we wrap up another shout out. You did mention it, Tim, that it looked like Leonard Moore was injured and we weren't sure whether he was going to come back. But man, that kid is really good. He is just flat out really, really good. And comparisons, Ben Morrison, whatever. It's a freshman with length, and he's playing phenomenal football. Xavier Watts is just a damn magnet to the football. It's incredible. And again, shout out. We said it in the instant analysis, but if anybody is worthy of setting the record for the most games played in Notre Dame uniform, Jack Kaiser is certainly very, very worthy of that.
Yes. Notre Dame has won 8 in a row, 35-14 over Virginia. We'll be back tomorrow with a podcast wrapping up the Virginia game. Until
Monday.
then, Monday. You're right.
Monday.
Let's just do it. I'm just going to get on tomorrow.
Okay.
Come on, everybody. Until Monday, Tim Prister of Irish Illustrated, John Brice of Football Scoop. Thank you for watching Irish Illustrated Overtime.